Welcome. It is great to have you here in person as well as on our online campus. And make yourself at home, sing along, as well as open your Bible to the different portions of Scriptures we're going to take a look at today as we begin a two-part series that you've asked for some time ago and we put into the schedule entitled Paranormal Reality. So I'm so glad to have you here. It's an important subject and topic we as Jesus followers need to be cognizant of and prepared to answer when people come our way with questions. Have you been in the stores lately? We're not even at the end of October. Thanksgiving isn't even in view, and they're already advertising for Christmas. It seems to me that the moment Labor Day is over, people are starting to sell Christmas trees, blinking lights, and the blow-up Santa for the front yard. Oh, it's not that the retail world doesn't realize that another very lucrative holiday is on the horizon named Halloween. I don't know if you know this, but statistics tell us that this year Americans will spend more than $12.2 billion on costumes, front yard decorations, and bags of that plastic orange and yellow candy that looks like a traffic cone. You know what I'm talking about? And yet, in the background of this spooky candy-centric celebration is a growing interest in the phenomenon known as the paranormal or the occultic. And we probably should talk about that. There are surveys currently coming out that say that when it comes to the world of spirits, we're becoming big believers. Statistics tell us that about 50% of all Americans believe in ghosts, or believe that spirits can come back from the dead in some way to people's homes or occasions or certain situations. Ranker.com tells us that paranormal themes really saturate many of the very popular series on TV and cable, like Evil or Wednesday or Stranger Things, give viewers a steady diet of conspiracies, monsters, demon possessions, as well as paranormal themes. After this service, go ahead and go to your app store, and you will find that you can buy several apps that can help you detect if you have ghosts in your house. One is called Real Ghost Detector. Bottom line, we're really interested in the paranormal. Paranormal. It's a word that refers to mental or psychic phenomenon that's beyond the normal. And we used to call it the world of the occult. Now, occult is an interesting word. It means that which is hidden or secret, beyond the range of ordinary human knowledge or below the surface of normal life. Now, that's the way most people want to take it. It's just some force out there, some energy that's neutral, benign, and you just can have fun with it. Maybe fun in movies, fun in haunted houses, fun in scary ghost stories. But if you're involved with the paranormal or the occultic, is that all there is? Is it just some kind of nebulous, some kind of benign energy out there that you can kind of tap into and be entertained by and have some fun and be intrigued by? What about seances and witches? What about Ouija boards and crystal balls? What about mediums and spirits? What about palm reading and tea leaf reading? And where does God fit in? And the unseen spiritual world? And angels and demons, and the end of time. That's what we're going to talk about in this two-part series. So let's go ahead and begin with what the Bible teaches concerning the unseen realm. And it teaches that the world in which we live is inhabited by spirits, by creatures, and intense activity. And sometimes they and their intense activity interact with our lives on planet Earth. That's a reality. That's why the Apostle Paul years ago wrote these words in Ephesians. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. So he's conniving. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. And then he's going to list a number of ranks of evil angels. He does this in Colossians as well. But against rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, because that's true, therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, not if, when it comes, you may be able to stand your ground. The reality is, you live on an invisible battlefield. There is war. There are battles. There is strife of the most important kind. That's your reality. But as a Jesus follower, as a Christian listening right now, you don't need to be fearful when we talk about these subjects or you read about them in your study of God's Word. You have already won because Jesus has won for you. With his death and resurrection, he's already conquered Satan and the powers of hell. And when Jesus comes again, what's going to happen is he's going to judge the entire world, including Satan, and then his victory will be complete. So as Christians, you have to realize Satan is a defeated enemy. Defeated, but still roaming right now. And from this moment in time to the end of days, he's going to try everything he can do to make sure to lead you away from Jesus. He doesn't care about the unbelievers. He already has them. He has them. He's concerned about people who trust in Christ because you're a pain in his rear. That's what you are. So he's coming after you. See, the devil just doesn't want to deceive. He wants to destroy. And he and his demons are very, very clever. His strategy is often to try to come across to you like, one, he doesn't exist, or that he's just some kind of impersonal force out there, or that he's even of God somehow, or he's just kind of a neutral force you can play with. His strategy of deception involves him trying to lead you away from God, and maybe at times even trying to convince you that evil really isn't that evil or powerful. And he'll even at times try to ape God, try to copy God. That's why the Apostle Paul wrote this in 2 Corinthians. Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light, which is why the Bible itself gives us this advice in 1 John. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Which brings us to the world of the occult. In the book of Ephesians, speaking to Jesus followers, it says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. Rather, expose them. 2 Corinthians says, in order that Satan may not outwit us, for we are not unaware of his schemes. So we're going today to take a look at two major characteristics of the paranormal so that you can recognize it when it does come your way. We're going to tackle the third characteristic next weekend, which will probably answer a lot of questions that will be raised today, so you need to come back next weekend. Now, the first characteristic of the paranormal I got to bring to your attention is this: the disclosure or communication of information unavailable to humans through normal means. Listen, that information has to come from somewhere. And if it's not coming from God through his God-ordained means, it's coming through the demonic. You see, my friends, there is no such thing as some power out there that's neutral, just kind of floating around that you can kind of tap into and be entertained by. If you believe that, you're foolish. Ultimately, there are only two categories. There is God and Satan. There is heaven and hell. There is good and evil. That's it. So let's talk about astrology and horoscopes. The Bible certainly teaches us not only did God create the stars, the moon, the planets, the sun, but he gave them their orbits, he gave them their constellations and their patterns. Do you know that? For example, in the book of Job it says, God is the maker of the Bear and Orion, of Pleiades and the constellations of the south. God used the stars in his own works and miracles, including using them to lead the Magi to baby Jesus. That's called astronomy, my friends. That's the study of the stars. That's good. That's different than astrology, which is using the stars for divination, which is bad. The Bible has a lot to say about that. For example, in Deuteronomy it says, "And when you look up to the sky and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the heavenly array, do not be enticed into bowing down to them." The temptation throughout history has been to make something of the stars and planets more than they really are, that they're somehow mystical and magical and powerful. And so you use them in divination, or you try to seek them for power. And whenever you try to contact something, even like the stars, you're trying to contact some kind of unknown power and unknown force. And please understand that the stars don't have that power. And Satan knows that, so he will use them anyways because he wants to lead you astray. That's why the Bible, for example, says this, God speaking through Isaiah, "You have trusted in your wickedness. Your wisdom and knowledge mislead you. Disaster will come upon you, and you will not know how to conjure it away. Keep on, then, with your magic spells and with your many sorceries. Let your astrologers come forward, those stargazers who make predictions month by month. They are like stubble. The fire will burn them up. They cannot even save themselves. Each of them goes on in his error." If you're looking at your horoscopes every day and you're buying into that garbage, stop it. That then leads us to another subject, and that is the subject of fortune telling. Whether it's tarot cards, numerology, crystal ball, palm reading, let's see what else. You got lots of stuff. Probably the big ones today are psychic hotlines and psychic websites. All of that is a sham. No one knows the future except for God himself. People think they're going to get some power out there, demonic force, going to tell them the future. Remember, the devil is a created angel, the good gone bad. He's limited. He's not going to be more powerful and knowledgeable than the Creator. So don't think that you're going to go to him and get knowledge that, that God doesn't know about. God's the only one that's all-knowing and all-powerful. That's why, again, in Zechariah it says, "Diviners see visions that lie. They tell dreams that are false. They give comfort in vain." And in Isaiah, once again, the Lord says, "I am the Lord, the creator of all things. I stretch out the heavens. I make fools of fortune tellers and frustrate the predictions of astrologers." In his book, Psychic Blues, The Confessions of a Convicted Medium, there's a guy named Mark Edward who says for decades he had worked and served and fooled people as a medium, psychic. And he said he made a living by peddling what he called junkyard superstition to the gullible, the lonely, the hopeful, and the dim. He admits in his book that he had no paranormal powers, nor did anybody else in his field. He was just very good at reading body language. He had good intuition. He was a good listener. He used common sense, and he was very empathetic. Although that whole area is really a sham and a fake industry, it's not a game to be played with. You see, when you're trying to contact some entity or force other than God, you're trying to contact the demonic. Whenever you try to contact the demonic, whenever you play with anything that's occultic, it's like juggling hand grenades. Sooner or later, someone's going to get hurt. Now, no doubt in a crowd this big and people listening, there's going to be a good question in mind. And it's this question, well, John, then how comes these psychics and mediums sometimes can tell you what is actually true in your life or true in a family member's life? How can they know exactly what happened in my life and I've never met them before? That's a good question. To answer it, you need to go back to the supernatural map of the world in which you truly live and work. Satan is a very powerful demon, more powerful than you and me, certainly. And he has a lot of demons under his command that are all over the place. And let me tell you something. They watch you every day. They listen to your conversations in your house. And they tempt you. And Satan doesn't know the future, but because of his powers and his demons everywhere, he's got a better handle on the present than we do. And sometimes, for his own purposes and in deception, he will go ahead and give a truth about you or a family member through these psychics or mediums that even shock the mediums, all to lead you astray. But just because they tell you something's true doesn't mean it came from a holy source. It came from a demonic source. That leads us to a second major, I would say, characteristic of occultic and paranormal phenomenon. And that is when people try to attempt physically to contact the dead, necromancy, and the demonic. A lot of ways people do that today is certainly through seances and Ouija boards. When you try to contact the spirit world or the dead, please understand you are opening a window, you are opening a door through which there's a great probability something's going to come through that can physically harm you, emotionally make you distraught, and spiritually destroy you. People who've been involved with Ouija boards or seances that I've got a chance to work with through the years will report that as they're doing that, they will have physical manifestations in the room, such as the room grows very cold all of a sudden, and you can see your breath. Or in a closed room, there'll be a rushing wind that goes through it. I've had people tell me about they're playing with Ouija boards, and then the planchet, that's that triangular thing that's made of plastic or wood that you put your fingers on, that the planchet moves all by itself. Or the board will levitate and spin, or sometimes the message will come back and no one's touching the board, but it comes back in a foreign language that only one person around the room knows. When those physical manifestations occur, and they will, do you know what's happened? Your invited guests have arrived, and they don't like to leave. That's why we call them familiar spirits. People who play with the occult always get more than they bargain for. Here's a passage you need to hear. When someone tells you to consult mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Consult God's instruction and testimony of warning. If anyone does not speak according to this word, they have no light of dawn. And again, it says in Leviticus, do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord. As a Christian, you have no reason to seek out wisdom, power, insight, comfort, peace, entertainment from the paranormal, from the dark side. Why do you want to spend time with the loser? You belong through faith to King Jesus, who brought you into his family as a son and daughter from your baptism. Jesus is the only one that's almighty. He's the only one that knows and controls the future. He's the only one that's everywhere all the time. He's the one who has conquered sin, death, and Satan for you. The Apostle Peter, in one of his letters, talks about King Jesus' victory over Satan and his demons at the moment Jesus died on the cross. That's when the victory occurred. It was final, really done. It's these famous words. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. And then it goes on to say, in which he went and proclaimed to the imprisoned spirits. The imprisoned spirits, that idea of proclaimed, is this. It's a Greek word that means the victor now does a victory parade right in front of the enemy to show that the enemy's been conquered. You and I are reminded of that every single time we join in the Apostles' Creed, as we did just before, with this phrase, he descended into hell. Remember, Jesus didn't descend into hell to suffer. No, all the suffering was complete. It was paid in full, the Greek word tetelestai. Jesus didn't suffer in hell. He went from the cross where he won the victory and went down to hell to break up a party that Satan was probably having because he thought he had won. And Jesus crashes the party and says, no, you lost. Through faith in Jesus, you have the forgiveness of every single sin, including when you were stupid and you played with the occult. In Jesus, you have protection because he sends legions of angels to protect you body and soul. In fact, in Jesus, he's given you a future that involves a forever stay in the golden country of heaven. Don't play with the dark side.